Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of How Did They Build That? This is the Glide edition. In these videos, we'll take a look at an existing Glide app from the template store, from the Glide template store, and we'll see how did they build that. We'll try to deconstruct parts of it and along the way also learn a few things about Glide apps. Now, recently, earlier this year, in fact, Glide has redesigned their UI, which means that the first three videos in this series are based on the old UI, and this video and the videos after this will be based on the new Glide UI. So stay tuned for that. My name is Clyde D'Souza, and once again, welcome to How Did They Build That? So we are here in the Glide template store, and today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this template called issue tracker. So this is made by Glide themselves. So what we'll do is we will first copy this template. So when we copy the template, it gets copied. When we copy the template, it gets copied into our Glide portal, our Glide dashboard. I already have an account with Glide, and so it's in the background. It would have signed me in and copied it into my account, and very soon I'll be able to use it. Awesome. It looks like the copy process has completed. So just before we get into the details, let's look at how how this app works, and then we'll take a look at how it was built. So what it is you have the first tab called issues. It's a list of issues, going by all the issues listed here. It's sort of like a building or apartment issue tracker, and this is used by the apartment owners and the caretaker of the building, or the building manager of the apartment. So when you click on them, it opens up the issue itself. You have a checkbox here to click on if the issue is resolved, and when you click on that, and if you go back, this shows up as a checkbox instead of a red circle. And if you go back into the issue, you can see that the issue is related to a building, an apartment. So if I click on that, it just tells me the details of that particular building. So in this case, it's actually a corporate headquarters. So some details about the building. And if I click on here buildings, it tells me the various buildings that have been registered. I suppose if I click on one of those, it will tell me the issues that fall in this building, so that are registered against this building. So that's a nice way to sort of keep track of issues from both the angles, both the views. So now that we've taken a look at how the app works, let's take a look at how it was built. So the first one obviously is the list of issues, and so there's two tabs here. So just to sort of recap, the tabs, or just to highlight in new Glide UI, the tabs are actually located right here in the top left. So you can see tabs, issues, and buildings, and based on what I click here, the screen changes as well. So this is a new thing that they've introduced. Earlier you would have to have click a few other items here, or a few other screens at least, to open up the tabs, but in this case it's right here on the top left of the screen. So that's nice. So you have issues, and now the contents here. So I can see that on my left it shows me as an inline list, and on the right it tells me what the screen. It tells me more information about the screen itself. So what it says is that the label is issues. The icon is this little exclamation icon here, exclamation triangle. The source for the data that comes into this table or this screen is coming from the issues spreadsheet, and the style is a list. So then based on what they click here, it's obviously that component has come here on the left. So that's good. And if I click on the inline list itself, I can configure the list component itself, and from the right I can see that the title is subject, the details is the reported message, the image is a status icon, and so on and so forth, right? So obviously I can change this to subject, and you'll see that the content here on the screen changes. So I'll move that back to reported message, and we'll leave it as this. There's a few other tabs here, so which is options and add form. Now you'll notice that there is a plus button here on the top right of your mobile device. So this allows users to add new issues, hence why this checkbox is checked. If I uncheck this box, obviously the plus button will disappear. So let me check that box again, because based on this issue type, you actually want users to add new issues. So it's not a view only app, it is something that users will interact with and will add more data. In the options, I have here show search bar, which just allows us to search from the number of issues. There's no filter. The sort is set in descending order, so that's a sort by status icon in descending order actually. So that's an interesting choice, and there's no other filters or groups set over here. So we're all good with that. Now when you click on the particular issue, so you have the issue details, so the detail screen of a particular issue that we are looking at. Now this screen comprises of multiple components. If I just drag myself here, on the left you can see that there's a few components here on the screen. You have the image, which in this case the person has not uploaded any image for this issue, so that's why there's nothing displayed here. You have title, which is the subject, and the details comes from the notes. So there's quite a few columns, which we'll take a look at how the spreadsheet actually looks like. But it looks like there's a few columns of data that it contains. So that's good. You have checkbox to mark if the issue is resolved or not. So that's fantastic, because the users would want to check that box once everything is done. You have a separator, and then you have a relation component. So the relation component allows us to link the various issues with the apartments that it belongs to. So in this case, you might only have one issue with one apartment, but when you look at it from an apartment's point of view, you could have multiple issues in one apartment. So that's something to note. Now obviously in this screen, if you wanted to add anything new, any other new component, you can always click on the plus icon here on the left, and this brings us various components on your screen. And then what I can do is I can just click on that. So I can say, let's say text, so I'll give more text, and oops, and then for this text component I'll just drag it on top just above the checkbox, and the data for this is well, we can really select anything, right? So you can just say reported at, and then that information which is stored in the spreadsheet will come through in the mobile device. So as you can see, all you have to do to repeat, and feel free to play around, click on the plus icon to search for a component. That component will then show up in the left panel here. All you need to do then is select the component, and then the configuration screen for that component will show up on the right hand side. And then and then you can play around with the different fields that are available here. And then based on whatever you do on the right hand side for that configuration for that particular component, the mobile device, the mockup will show you in real time what changes have been made. So just like you've seen, so let's say if you want to do a center align, we can do that, and immediately the text is gone center. So depending on what component you choose, and the options here on the right hand side will differ, and then based on what you select, that output will show up on your screen. So fairly simple. Now, before we look at the buildings tab here, what I want to do is take a look at the spreadsheet itself, because I can see that there's a few things here that's computed. And the reason I say that is because when we looked at the detail screen and we looked at one of these columns, I can see that there's quite a bit of list here of different columns. So let's take a look at what columns and what type of data is really stored in the spreadsheet. So let's go back home, and in the new Glide Apps UI, if you want to switch to the spreadsheet view, if you want to look at the data, you click on the first option here, this little nice grid that's situated here on the top. Click on that, and that should open up the spreadsheet. Nice. So we can see that the sources is issue tracker, and if I click on this, it will take me to the Google Drive folder where this spreadsheet is located. On the left, they call this tables obviously, but if you look at the spreadsheet, it's really just individual sheets in the spreadsheet. So in this case, I have buildings and I have issues. If you click on the issues spreadsheet, you can see that there's a list of columns. Let me see if I can scroll this to the right. Yep, there you go. So there's a list of columns. These are fairly standard. So you have subject, which is text, another text, photograph, which is really the image URL. Nothing too fancy, and nothing that we have already not covered before in the first three videos. So those are fairly standard columns. Over here, what do we have? And this is something I want to take a look, because that controls the main checkbox, right? So the users can mark an issue has resolved or not, and that's really the main functionality of this app. So we have this column called status, and this, if I click on edit, is of type Boolean, so which means it can be either checked or not checked, true or false, right? So that those are the only two options, either it is set or it's not set. And now if I scroll here to the right, I was really curious of how those icons show up. And if so, what I mean by that is these little checkboxes and circles. If I click on the item and if I check this box, you'll notice that immediately this turns into a checkbox as well from a red circle. So I was really curious how that shows up, and essentially the way that changes, that icon changes, is based on a computed column type. What it does, so it comes up from here, right? Status icon. So if I click on the edit option for the status icon, I can see that this is a glide column type called if then else. The cases for if then else are if the status check, the column is true, which means it is checked, then the value for this column status icon should be a green checkbox emoji. Otherwise, which is else, we add it as a red circle. And now obviously you can see this add case button over here, which means that you can actually add multiple if else conditions. So in this case, we are looking just at a Boolean checkbox. So this could either be set or unset, true or false, but depending on what column you're looking at, you could have multiple values, or you could cater for multiple conditions, and therefore you can have multiple if conditions and else conditions, and then finally a default else condition if no other conditions match or no other cases match above. So this is a computed column, so that's great. Now we have a few other columns as well. I can see that there's some sort of computation going on here, and the only reason I'm saying that is because I can see that there's these numbers shown up, and then the same number reflects in this message. So this has caught my attention right now. So what it is, so let's see the reported message. If I edit, it just says that it is of type text, and if I click on this, it says it's of type number. So clearly this is not a computed column anymore. Interesting. So if I go back to the screen and if I click on new issue, so let's say live preso issue, and oops, maybe not, and some notes, and then click on the add button to add this new issue. I can see that's added here. Let's see what shows up. So you have live preso and live preso. The status is all marked, so all that is good, but obviously these two fields are not being set. So that's fine. It's probably just not used, therefore it is not set. But I was really thinking that this column is computed based on this value. So you have this is what reported, what is it called, reported days ago. So it would be pretty much like a formula or something which says this has been reported 679 days ago, and then that is put into a message here as a template, but apparently it is not. So just for the scope of this, so I mean it can be done. It's not that it can't be done. It definitely can be done, and I'll probably show you how to do it in another video, but just for the scope of this video, since it's not been implemented that way, I'll just not talk about it or just not demonstrate that part right now. The next thing to talk about is the column type called building, and what we have here is a column type called relation. Now what this says, this tells us that each of these rows corresponds, I mean these are all issues, and therefore the issue is related to the building that it is in. And in this case, what we are saying is match the building name column from this sheet, from the issues sheet, match the building name column with the name column from the buildings sheet, so which is the other one here, right? So provided the names match exactly, what it'll do is it will sort of construct that relationship and display it over here. So in this case, obviously an issue won't be related to multiple buildings, but multiple issues can be related to a single building. So if I look at the buildings tab here, and if I look at the list of issues, so you can see that there's actually a number of issues rolling up into a single building row. And if I click on the drop down, click on edit, I can see that the column type is a relation, and the configuration in this sheet is that match, what this says is match the column name called name, right? Match the name column from this sheet, the current sheet that we are in, which is buildings. Match the values from that column with the column name called building name from the issues spreadsheet or from the issues sheet, right? So this is always the source. This is always the source, which is the current one, and this is always the destination. So the second one is always the destination. And provided the values match from the name and the building name column, it creates that relationship. And because our match multiple checkboxes checked, it will actually pull multiple issues into each row of this sheet. So if I uncheck this, you can see that there's only one issue listed here per column. So in this case, it is a one-to-many relationship. So I'll keep this checked. While we are still in this sheet, you can see that there's really nothing much, there's nothing fancy going on here. The rest of the columns are really just the basic column types. You have name, you have a photograph. This one is a phone number. So all of these, if I click on this drop down once again, all of these you can see that there's just the default column types that then Glide provides, and it's just data that we are capturing. So now if I go click on the second icon here to go back to my mobile mockup, and then if I click on buildings, now here I can see the list of buildings, that have been pulled from the buildings sheet of my spreadsheet. And what this is really, this is an inline list, an inline list component here, but the style that's given to it is of a map. And so while these list items just show up here, I can see that there's a button here, a navigation map button. If I click on that, it pulls up a map, and it has already added pointers on the map. So based on the address that we had configured, it has already added pointers to the map. I can click on one of these pointers and it is automatically brought up the details of this building. And if I click on the building, it shows up the details for that building, the detail screen for that building. So this is great. So if I click back here, apparently if I click on this button here, it should take me back to the list view, so I can switch between the two views. If I click on one of these, again it takes me back to the particular building. So I can keep doing that, and it will it'll show me the details for each and every building. Now if I look on the right hand side, this screen has a pencil icon here, which means if I click on the edit form, it has got this allow users to edit checkbox checked. So that's why this pencil icon shows up. If I click on the report issues button, so if I just configure that from the left, and what this does is that the action, so when you click on this, the action for that is to show up a form. And so when I click on that, a form opens up. When I click on that, a form opens up, and what I can do is, so I have a few options here. So I have title, I have some entry, which is a text entry. So the title was actually the banner image itself. Awesome. The text entry are the fields, then the notes is the fields. There's a option for us to add a photograph, and there's a few other computed columns as well. Now because we clicked it from the previous screen, which was the sorting facility building detail screen, this has actually picked up a few details from that. So that is great. I think this has been added recently. It used to not be able to do that before. So that is good. So if I click on the form option here on the right, I can see that the destination for all the data will go in the issues sheet, the one that we were just looking before, and we just added one before. And the on submit is to show a notification, and the icon is a success message. So if I just say dummy test notes and click on submit, it would just show up a small notification, and that's pretty much it. The detail screen itself is just another screen, and what you can do is, if you want more information from that sheet, you can populate the sheet with more information and then click on the plus icon here, just like we seen in the previous screen, to pull up whatever components that you would like. Pull it up and it'll just present itself over here, and then it'll show up there. Now I can see that there's an inline list called issues, but there's no information really showing up over here. Now it could just be that it has not been configured correctly. So it appears that the inline list, there were some issues with the inline list, and after resetting the values over here, so if I click on options and if I set this value to 0, for example, this then sort of reflects, or at least it refreshes this list with the actual issues. So status is not 1. So this would mean that all the items that are not resolved yet will show up, and that's really what we're after. So originally when I copied it, the inline list was actually not displaying any issues. So what I did was I clicked on this, clicked on options, and just played around with the filter. And once I got this, it was set to false. Once I got this to 1, and then sort of just refreshed the screen, then the right amount of issues populated on my screen. So overall, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover with this. There's almost, in terms of complexity, it is pretty good. If you're starting with Glide, then this is a good example to pick up and learn. And yeah, I hope you liked the video. And if you did, please do share, do like the video, and just let me know in the comments what you think of this video, think of Glide. The format for the video is like super casual. It's just walking you through the examples that are there on Glide, and just seeing how it is built, and just explaining a few other concepts along the way as well. So super casual video, and there'll be more to come. All right, go have a good one, guys. See ya.